In the beginning, there was only desert, endless stretches of golden sand and dry steppe, where the wind whispered ancient stories across lands that had witnessed empires rise and fall for thousands of years. This was Anatolia, the bridge between East and West, a fractured, chaotic place in the 13th century, torn apart by invasions and the collapse of old powers. Caught between the dying Byzantine Empire and the terrifying Mongol hordes, a small tribe of Turkish nomads searched desperately for a homeland they could call their own. They were warriors, survivors, dreamers, and they carried with them a vision that would change the world forever. Led by a man named Ertugrul Ghazi, they fled westward from Mongol destruction, seeking not just survival, but destiny. The world they entered was dangerous, defined by violence and the constant struggle for power. Only the strongest could endure, but from this small tribe would emerge an empire so vast, so powerful, that it would stretch across 3 continents and last for over 600 years. This is the story of the Ottoman Empire, a story of ambition and conquest, of glory and decline, of power that shaped the world. And it begins not in a palace or a throne room, but in a simple tent on the open steppe where a dream was born. A dream that would become one of the greatest empires in human history. The Kayi tribe were nomads, herders and warriors displaced from their homeland in Central Asia, driven west by the Mongol storm that had devastated entire civilizations. When they arrived in Anatolia, the Seljuk Sultanate gave them land near the Byzantine frontier, a dangerous place where survival required constant vigilance. Ertugrul was not just strong, he was cunning. He knew how to fight, how to negotiate, how to build alliances with both Muslims and Christians. But the shadow of the Mongol Empire loomed over everything, a reminder that no place was truly safe, that power could be destroyed in an instant. Many tribes fled in fear, but Ertugrul chose to stand his ground, to carve out a place for his people in this fractured world. Slowly, over years of careful strategy and brutal combat, Ertugrul expanded his territory, capturing Byzantine fortresses and earning a reputation as a fierce leader. The tribe settled in the hills of Anatolia, near the town of Sagat, where they built their first permanent homes and began to transform from nomads into settlers. Ertugrul ruled with wisdom and strength, but he knew that his real legacy would not be measured by what he achieved, but by what his son would build. The young warriors of the tribe trained daily, mastering the skills of horsemanship, archery, and swordsmanship that would make them feared across the region. And when Ertugrul died in the late 13th century, he passed his legacy to a young man who had been raised on stories of conquest and glory. The world that young Osman inherited was dominated by giants. The Byzantine Empire still controlled vast territories, and Mongol power loomed in the east. But Osman saw opportunity where others saw only danger. He launched raids against Byzantine outposts, capturing supplies and gaining experience. In the Council of Tribal Elders, Osman spoke with a confidence that surprised many. He was young, but he had vision, and he knew exactly what he wanted to build. He had watched his father lead warriors into battle, make difficult decisions, and build something from nothing. Now it was his turn. The land was fertile, the rivers ran clear, and the mountains provided natural defenses. This would be the foundation of something far greater than anyone imagined. The year was 1299, and Osman stood before his warriors with a declaration that would echo through history. He proclaimed independence from the dying Seljuk Sultanate. Osman I was not just a warrior. He was a strategist, a diplomat, and a man who understood that building an empire required more than just conquest. According to legend, Osman dreamed that a great tree grew from his chest, its branches covering the entire world, its roots sinking deep into 3 continents. With this dream as his guide, Osman began the work of empire building, carefully, methodically, never overextending, always consolidating his gains. His first major victory came against the Byzantines at the Battle of Bafus, where his disciplined warriors defeated a much larger force. The Byzantine cavalry, once feared throughout the region, proved no match for the mobility and determination of Osman's mounted archers. With each victory, Osman planted his flag, a symbol not just of conquest, but of permanence, of a new order that was rising in Anatolia. He minted the first Ottoman coins, established courts of law, and began to create the administrative systems that would govern his growing state. The people of conquered towns quickly learned that Ottoman rule was different. Taxes were fair, justice was administered honestly, and protection was guaranteed. Osman ordered the construction of mosques, schools, and public baths, transforming conquered towns into thriving Ottoman cities. Word of Ottoman victories spread, and Byzantine commanders began to fear this new power rising on their eastern frontier. In 1324, as Osman lay dying, he called his son Orhan to his bedside for one final conversation. Osman passed his sword to Orhan, the symbol of leadership, and told him to continue the work, to never stop expanding, to never accept defeat. The small principality that Osman had founded was now a recognized state, with defined borders, a functioning government, and an army that had never been defeated. The funeral of Osman was attended by thousands, warriors and peasants alike, all mourning the loss of the man who had given them a homeland. But there was no time for prolonged grief. Orhan took command immediately, and his first act was to address the assembled warriors and promise them glory. Under Orhan's leadership, the Ottoman state continued to expand, capturing the city of Bursa, which became the first official Ottoman capital. The Ottoman flag, with its crescent and star, was raised over Bursa's citadel, a symbol that this was no longer just a tribal territory, but a real state. Orhan encouraged trade, agriculture, and craftsmanship, understanding that a strong economy was just as important as a strong army. By 1350, the Ottoman state controlled a significant portion of northwestern Anatolia, and Orhan was preparing for the next great step. In 1354, Ottoman soldiers crossed the Dardanelles Strait, setting foot on European soil for the first time. It was a moment that would change history. The Europeans, who had dismissed the Ottomans as just another Anatolian tribe, suddenly realized that a new threat had emerged, one that would not be stopped. Christian knights watched in disbelief as Ottoman banners appeared on the horizon, marking the beginning of centuries of conflict. At the Battle of Maritsa in 1371, the Ottomans crushed a Serbian army, demonstrating their military superiority over European forces. The Serbian nobles, confident in their heavy cavalry and European tactics, were overwhelmed by the speed and discipline of the Ottoman forces. General Lala Shahin commanded the Ottoman forces in Europe with tactical brilliance, capturing fortress after fortress with minimal losses. European towns and villages fell one after another, and the Ottoman advance seemed unstoppable as they pushed deeper into the Balkans. When news reached Rome that the Ottomans had established a permanent presence in Europe, Pope Gregory called for a crusade, but few answered. The kings of Europe met in emergency councils, debating how to stop this new Islamic power that threatened the heart of Christendom. In 1389, the Serbs formed a coalition of Balkan states and prepared for a final battle that would determine the fate of southeastern Europe. Sultan Murad I personally led his army at the Battle of Kosovo, riding at the front of his cavalry as they charged the Serbian lines. The Battle of Kosovo was brutal and bloody, with thousands dying on both sides, but the Ottoman discipline and superior tactics prevailed. In the aftermath of the battle, Sultan Murad was assassinated by a Serbian knight who pretended to surrender and then struck with a hidden dagger. Murad's son, Bayezid, was crowned sultan immediately on the battlefield, surrounded by blood and bodies, and he swore to avenge his father. Despite the loss of their sultan, the Ottoman army celebrated their victory, knowing they had broken Serbian power forever. Across Europe, panic spread as messengers brought news of the Ottoman victory and the fear that no Christian army could stop them. The Ottoman Empire now controlled a vast swathe of the Balkans, from Thrace to Serbia, and the path to Central Europe lay open. Bayezid earned the nickname Yildirim, the Thunderbolt, because his armies moved with such speed that his enemies never knew where he would strike next. In 1394, Bayezid laid siege to Constantinople itself, surrounding the great city and cutting off all supply routes. Emperor Constantine looked out over the Ottoman camps surrounding his city and knew that without help from the west, Constantinople would fall. But from the east came a terror greater than anything Europe had ever seen. Timur, known as Tamerlane, the Mongol conqueror, had built an empire through blood. Timur was a descendant of Genghis Khan, a man who had destroyed kingdoms from India to Persia, and he saw the Ottomans as rivals to his power. When Bayezid received news that Timur was demanding his submission, he laughed and sent back a message of defiance. In 1402, at the Battle of Ankara, two of the most powerful armies in the world faced each other in central Anatolia. The battle was catastrophic. Timur's forces, larger and more experienced, tore through the Ottoman lines with devastating efficiency. Many of Bayezid's soldiers, recruited from Anatolian tribes that had once served other masters, defected to Timur during the battle. Sultan Bayezid was captured on the battlefield, humiliated, and imprisoned in a cage, paraded through Timur's camp as a trophy. Timur stood victorious over the ruins of the Ottoman army, but he had no interest in ruling Anatolia permanently. He simply wanted to destroy a rival. After Bayezid's death in captivity, his sons turned on each other, fighting a brutal civil war that nearly destroyed everything their ancestors had built. For over a decade, the Ottoman state was fractured, with different princes controlling different territories and refusing to cooperate. Finally, one of Bayezid's sons, Mehmed I, defeated his brothers and reunified the empire through a combination of military force and diplomatic skill. Mehmed spent years rebuilding what had been destroyed, restoring order, reasserting Ottoman authority over rebellious provinces, and reforming the army. When Mehmed died, his son Murad II took the throne and continued the work of restoration, defeating new enemies and expanding Ottoman territory once again. The Ottoman military was reformed and strengthened, with the Janissaries becoming an even more elite force, trained and equipped better than ever before. By the 1440s, the Ottoman Empire had not only recovered from the disaster at Ankara, but had emerged stronger, more centralized, and ready for its greatest achievement yet. In 1451, a young man of 21 became sultan. His name was Mehmed, and from childhood, he had been obsessed with one goal: Constantinople. Mehmed was not like other sultans. He trained constantly, studied warfare, engineering, and languages, and he never stopped preparing for the moment when he would attack. Standing on the Asian shore of the Bosphorus, Mehmed stared across the water at the great city, the city that had resisted every siege for over 1,000 years. The Theodosian walls of Constantinople were considered impregnable, triple-layered defenses with towers, moats, and gates that had never been breached. Mehmed called his generals together and told them that Constantinople would fall, not through luck or divine intervention, but through planning and engineering. He ordered the construction of Rumeli Fortress on the Bosphorus, cutting off Constantinople's access to the Black Sea and demonstrating Ottoman control of the strait. Mehmed commissioned a Hungarian engineer named Orban to build the largest cannons ever created, weapons capable of destroying the walls of Constantinople. When the great cannon was test-fired, its roar could be heard for miles, and the stone projectile smashed through a massive wall, proving its devastating power. In the spring of 1453, Mehmed's army, numbering over 80,000 men, arrived outside Constantinople and began to encircle the city. Inside, Emperor Constantine XI addressed his tiny garrison of less than 10,000, telling them they were the last defenders of Christian Constantinople. The defenders watched in grim determination as Ottoman tents spread across the hills surrounding the city, knowing they were vastly outnumbered. On April 6th, the bombardment began. The massive cannons fired day and night, each shot cracking the ancient walls a little more. The walls held, barely, and each night the defenders worked frantically to repair the damage before dawn brought another day of relentless bombardment. The Golden Horn Harbor was protected by a massive chain stretched across its entrance, preventing Ottoman ships from entering and attacking from the north. Mehmed conceived a plan so audacious that his own generals thought it was impossible. If the ships couldn't sail into the harbor, they would be dragged overland. On the night of April 22nd, 70 Ottoman ships were dragged over a hill on greased wooden rollers, bypassing the chain and entering the Golden Horn. By dawn, the defenders saw Ottoman ships floating in the harbor behind their northern walls, and they realized their strategic position was hopeless. On May 28th, Mehmed gave the order. The final assault would begin at dawn the next day. On May 29th, wave after wave of Ottoman soldiers stormed the walls, climbing over rubble, fighting desperately, dying in the thousands. The Janissaries led the final charge, breaking through a small gate that had been left open and pouring into the city in an unstoppable flood. Emperor Constantine, knowing all was lost, removed his royal robes, drew his sword, and charged into the chaos, dying as his city fell. By noon, the Ottoman flag flew over the walls of Constantinople. The Byzantine Empire, which had lasted for over 1100 years, was finished. Mehmed entered the city slowly, riding through streets littered with the dead, taking in the magnitude of what he had achieved. He dismounted at the Hagia Sophia, walked inside alone, and stood in silence beneath the Great Dome, overwhelmed by the history and beauty around him. Mehmed ordered the Hagia Sophia converted into a mosque, symbolizing that Constantinople was now Istanbul, capital of the Islamic Ottoman Empire. The city was renamed Istanbul, and Mehmed began the work of transforming it into a thriving multicultural capital. Mehmed sat on his throne as master of 3 continents, Europe, Asia, and Africa, and the world recognized that a new superpower had emerged. News of the fall spread across Europe like wildfire, causing shock, fear, and despair among Christian kingdoms who saw it as the end of an era. Mehmed invited scholars, artists, and merchants from across the world to settle in Istanbul, making it a center of learning and culture. Mehmed the Conqueror had achieved what no one thought possible. He had conquered the unconquerable city and changed the course of history forever. In 1520, a new sultan took the throne at the age of 26. His name was Suleiman, and history would call him the Magnificent. Suleiman was tall, handsome, intelligent, and charismatic, a man who combined military genius with a deep appreciation for law, culture, and governance. Unlike many sultans who focused only on conquest, Suleiman spent hours studying law, philosophy, and poetry, believing that a great ruler must be both warrior and scholar. His first campaign was against Belgrade, the gateway to Central Europe, a fortress that had resisted Ottoman sieges for decades. In 1526, at the Battle of Mohacs, Suleiman's army destroyed the Hungarian kingdom in a single afternoon of devastating combat. King Louis II of Hungary fled the battlefield and drowned while trying to cross a swollen river, ending the Hungarian royal line. Suleiman entered Budapest in triumph, and the news sent shockwaves across Europe as kingdoms realized the Ottomans might conquer them all. In 1529, Suleiman brought his army to Vienna, the capital of the Habsburg Empire, and laid siege to one of the great cities of the West. The defenders of Vienna knew that if the city fell, nothing would stop the Ottomans from marching deeper into the heart of Europe. But heavy rain, supply problems, and the approaching winter forced Suleiman to lift the siege and retreat, though Vienna had barely survived. Suleiman returned to Istanbul to massive celebrations, hailed as the greatest sultan since Mehmed the Conqueror. At sea, the Ottoman Admiral Barbarossa commanded the most powerful navy in the Mediterranean, defeating European fleets and establishing Ottoman naval dominance. The Ottoman fleet controlled trade routes, raided European coasts, and ensured that no Christian power could challenge Turkish supremacy at sea. At the Battle of Preveza in 1538, Barbarossa destroyed a combined European fleet, cementing Ottoman control of the Mediterranean. By the 1540s, the Ottoman Empire was at its absolute peak, controlling the Balkans, Middle East, North Africa, and threatening Europe itself. In the palace, Suleiman fell deeply in love with a woman named Hürrem, a former slave who became his wife and one of the most powerful women in Ottoman history. Their relationship was extraordinary for its time, a genuine love story in a world where political marriages and concubines were the norm. But the palace was filled with intrigue, jealousy, and conspiracy, as different factions competed for power and influence over the Sultan. In a moment that would haunt him forever, Suleiman ordered the execution of his most capable son, Mustafa, believing false accusations of treason. The death of Mustafa broke something inside Suleiman, and in his later years, He was haunted by the decision that had cost him his best heir. But Suleiman's legacy was not just military. He commissioned the construction of magnificent mosques, bridges, and public works that still stand today. The Suleiman I Mosque, designed by the architect Mimar Sinan, became one of the greatest architectural achievements in Islamic history. The Ottoman court became a center of artistic excellence, with calligraphers, miniature painters, and poets creating works of extraordinary beauty. Scholars from across the Islamic world came to Istanbul, attracted by Suleiman's patronage and the intellectual vitality of his court. Trade routes connected east and west through Ottoman territory, making Istanbul one of the wealthiest and most cosmopolitan cities in the world. In 1566, at the age of 71, Suleiman set out on one final campaign to Hungary, determined to lead his armies even in old age. He died in his tent on September 6, 1566, still on campaign. His death kept secret until the army could return safely to Ottoman territory. In the north, Russian Tsar Peter the Great built a modern army specifically designed to conquer Ottoman territory. Russian forces defeated Ottoman armies and pushed south toward the Black Sea. Ottoman territory in Europe began to shrink rapidly as Greeks, Serbs, Bulgarians, and other peoples rebelled against Turkish rule. In 1821, the Greeks rose in revolution, fighting for independence with support from European powers. Britain, France, and Russia sent money, weapons, and even troops to support Greek independence. In 1829, Greece won its independence, becoming the first Ottoman territory to successfully break away. Sultan Mahmud II recognized that reform was essential and decided to destroy the Janissaries, the very institution that had once made the empire strong. In 1826, Mahmud ordered the massacre of the Janissaries in what became known as the Auspicious Incident, killing thousands to save the empire. A new army was created, trained in European methods, but it came too late to reverse decades of decline. The Tanzimat reforms attempted to modernize the government. Ottoman students were sent to study in Europe. In the Crimean War of 1854, the Ottomans fought alongside Britain and France against Russia, winning but only with European help. The empire sank deeper into debt, borrowing money from European banks at crippling interest rates. The Balkans exploded in a series of wars as Serbia, Bulgaria, and Romania fought for and won their independence. Ottoman armies retreated in chaos. Millions of Muslims fled the Balkans, streaming into Anatolia as refugees. A group of young Ottoman officers and intellectuals, frustrated with the Sultan's inability to reform, began meeting secretly. In 1908, the Young Turks staged a revolution, forcing Sultan Abdul Hamid to restore the constitution. The Committee of Union and Progress took control of the government, led by a group known as the Three Pashas, who would lead the empire into its final war. By 1914, the Ottoman Empire was surrounded by enemies, weakened by decades of decline, and desperately searching for a way to survive. The empire that had once been feared across 3 continents was now called the Sick Man of Europe. In August 1914, the Three Pashas made a fateful decision. They would ally the Ottoman Empire with Germany and enter the Great War. On November 1, 1914, the Ottoman Empire officially entered World War I, hoping to regain lost territories. Ottoman soldiers marched to multiple fronts, fighting a war on a scale never seen before. In 1915, Allied forces launched an invasion at Gallipoli. British, French, Australian, and New Zealand troops landed on the beaches under withering Ottoman fire, suffering horrific casualties. A young Ottoman officer named Mustafa Kemal commanded the defense, rallying his troops with the famous order, "I am not ordering you to attack, I am ordering you to die." The Ottoman soldiers held the high ground, repelling wave after wave of Allied attacks. After 8 months of brutal fighting, the Allies withdrew in defeat, and Gallipoli became the Ottoman Empire's greatest victory of the war. But in Mesopotamia, British forces advanced toward Baghdad. In Palestine, British forces advanced with support from Arab rebels who had risen against Ottoman rule. Lawrence of Arabia led Arab forces in guerrilla warfare against Ottoman railways and supply lines. By 1918, The Ottoman army was collapsing on all fronts, exhausted, outnumbered, and unable to replace losses. When Bulgaria surrendered in September 1918, it opened the path to Istanbul. On October 30th, 1918, the Ottoman Empire signed the Armistice of Mudros, officially ending the war. Within days, Allied warships sailed through the Bosphorus and anchored in front of Istanbul. Allied soldiers occupied Istanbul, and the Ottoman government became a puppet regime controlled by foreign powers. Mustafa Kemal, refusing to accept defeat, left Istanbul secretly and traveled to Anatolia to organize resistance. In Anatolia, nationalist forces gathered around Kemal, forming a new Turkish army determined to fight for independence. The Turkish War of Independence began, and for the next 4 years, Turkish nationalists fought against Greek, French, Italian, and Armenian forces. Mustafa Kemal rallied Anatolian peasants, former soldiers, and patriots to the nationalist cause, promising them a new Turkey, free and independent. At the Battle of Sakarya in 1921, Turkish forces stopped the Greek advance and turned the tide of the war. The Treaty of Lausanne in 1923 recognized the independence of Turkey. On November 1st, 1922, the Ottoman Sultanate was abolished, ending over 6 centuries of Ottoman rule. The last Ottoman Sultan, Mehmed VI, left Istanbul on a British warship, sailing into exile and never returning to Turkey. On October 29, 1923, Mustafa Kemal proclaimed the Republic of Turkey with himself as its first president. In 1924, the Caliphate was abolished, severing the last link between the Ottoman past and the Turkish future. Ataturk introduced sweeping reforms, replacing Islamic law with European-style codes, changing the alphabet and modernizing Turkish society. The grand palaces of the Ottoman sultans stood empty, monuments to a vanished empire. Istanbul's skyline, with its minarets and domes, remained beautiful, but the city no longer ruled an empire. Today, the Topkapi Palace stands as a museum, where tourists walk through halls that once echoed with the footsteps of sultans. The Hagia Sophia remains a symbol of Istanbul's layered past, bridging Christianity and Islam. Modern Istanbul is a thriving metropolis where ancient meets modern, East meets West, and the legacy of empire lives on in every street. Across the former Ottoman lands, from the Balkans to the Middle East, archaeological sites and monuments remind us of an empire that once ruled the world. Ottoman architecture, from mosques to bridges to public baths, can be found across 3 continents. The Bosphorus Strait, which the Ottomans controlled for centuries, remains one of the world's most strategic waterways. 1299 to 1922. 623 years, one empire, one dream, one legacy. And so ended the Ottoman Empire, not with a sudden catastrophe, but with a slow fade into history, leaving behind only ruins, memories, and the eternal lesson that all empires, no matter how powerful, eventually fall. This was the Ottoman Empire. Remember it, learn from it, and never forget that nothing lasts forever.